whatever angle. Hello, everybody.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the internet. For those who don't know me, my name is Leo, leader of CDV Youth, and this wonderful woman is
Diana,
my lovely wife. And today we're going to go ahead. Last week we talked about deception, right? Today we're going to talk about mentality, all right? And deception actually has a lot to do with mentality, and you'll see how it connects. We're actually going to be using very similar characters, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. And we're going to be following Abraham's story again in the book of Genesis. Now, what I want you guys to concentrate on today is what is mentality? And before we get into all that, we're going to go ahead and pray. So, Lord, thank you for having us here. Thank you for all of the wonderful things that you do for us. Thank you for just the revelation that you give us every day. Thank you for giving us hunger for the word. You are great and all powerful, and we just want more of you every single day, and all the glory be to you. Amen. All right, guys. So the difference between something like faith and mentality ends up being that faith is something that you believe in, right? Mentality are the thoughts that are being beaten around and bounced around in your brain every single day, as well as the reactions and the actions and the words that come out of your mouth that manifest because of that mentality.
Right.
Okay? So we're going to get into a few verses that talk about mentality, and then we're going to get into a character of the Bible where we see, or hopefully see, a mentality shift. All right? So we're going to start with Romans 8:5.
Romans 8:5. Those who live according to the flesh have their mind set on what the flesh desires, but those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their mind set on what the Spirit desires.
All right. So what is our mind set on? What mindset? All right. What is our mindset on? Is our mindset on the desires of the flesh, or is our mind set on the desires of the Spirit, right? And depending on which one of those two it's set at, that's going to make a huge difference with what our reactions are going to be, as well as what our thoughts are going to be in our mind, right?
There's lots of variables that that influence you, and then that change your mindset, what you think. Yeah.
Yes. So this is something that a verse that we're going to keep going back to, right? It really just gives us more of a description of what a mindset is like and why it's so important. Okay. We're going to go ahead and move on to Matthew 12:33. All right.
Make a tree good and its fruit will be good, or make a tree bad and its fruit will be bad, for a tree is recognized by its fruit.
Absolutely. So what we see here is we're going from mentality to fruit. Okay. So fruit all sprouts out from a seed initially, right? So a seed leads to a tree, and that tree leads to fruit, right?
Yes.
So if I were to plant an apple tree, an apple seed, sorry. I'm not going to be expecting oranges, correct?
Yeah.
So it's the same with our mindset. We can't be having, a negative mindset and expect positive things to happen in our life, okay?
Right.
And vice versa. We can't have a positive mindset expecting negative things to happen, right? So what we see here is we see that depending on what seeds we actually plant, that's what's going to eventually grow. So the seeds that we're planting every single day are the seeds of what we're thinking about, right? Yeah. So are we thinking, I'm going to go in today and I'm going to have an incredible day today. I'm going to be able to accomplish all of the goals that I need to. I'm going to get out of work, have an incredible time with my family, and everything is going to go well for me. If you plant those positive seeds, then positive things will happen, or you will be expecting and looking
You're going to be
for
I was
the
gonna say,
positive
you're going to be
things.
looking for the positive things.
Absolutely.
The positive will send out more.
Yes. And that's the thing, is really negative and positive things happen to us all day.
Yeah.
But what are we shining a light on?
Mhm.
What are we really focusing on? Because that ends up being what incorporates more and reinforces more into your mindset or your mentality.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to get into this very interesting story of Abraham, right? And for those who don't know much about Abraham, Abraham is a descendant of Adam and Eve, right? He's called by God to go ahead and be the father of the Jewish people. Now, what we're going to see and what we're going to get into is really the first obstacle that Abraham is going to run into when he's told to go ahead and leave his old country where his parents are at and to go to a new country where he's going to this promised land. And when he gets there, he's going to be able to be a father of many nations. This is significant because Abraham is already older. He's not just older, but his wife Sarah is sterile. So when this huge God stops him in his tracks and says, I'm going to make you a father of many nations, and I'm going to go ahead and give you descendants that are more numerous than the stars in the sky or the sand on a beach, right? Then you're going to go ahead and listen, right? So we're going to jump into Abraham's story at the very first sign of an obstacle. Okay, so we're going to get into Genesis 12:10-13. Here we go.
Now there was a famine in the land, and Abram went to Egypt to live there for a while because the famine was severe. As he was about to enter Egypt, he said to his wife Sarai, I know what a beautiful woman you are. When the Egyptians see you, they will say, this is his wife. Then they will kill me, but will let you live. Say you are my sister, so that I will be treated well for your sake, and my life will be spared because of you.
Wow. So what did he just do?
He belittled his wife a little.
Yeah. What's he listening to? What's his mentality like? Is his mentality
scared and fearful?
Sure, scared and fearful. Is his mentality aligned with the father of the Jewish nation?
No.
No. At least that's not what's being manifested out, right? That's not what's coming out. What's coming out is fear, like you said. He's got a mentality of fear. Why? Because let's keep it real, like self-preservation. What's going on in the world at this point, right? There's not cops. These are just people. These are just groups of people at the beginning of time. There's no cops for him to complain to that they're trying to steal his wife. Bigger, badder men will just come over, clonk him in the head, kill him, steal his wife. So he's thinking about like his carnal needs. We can go back to Romans, and we were reading about how if we listen to our flesh, we're going to be terrified and fearful and anxious. But if we listen to the Spirit of God, then that is going to go ahead and give us a cooler head. That's going to give us that mentality of strength, of victory. But at this point, he's following the carnal mentality of fear. Okay? And what's he willing to do? He's willing to say that his wife is his sister. Why? Because he's like, you're beautiful. You're so beautiful that someone's going to want to steal you away from me. And we're going to read, was he right? What does it say in 15?
15. And when Pharaoh's officials saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and she was taken into his palace.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was right.
So he was right. They took Sarah. They straight up took Sarah because they're like, well, are you sure this is not your wife? All right, she's coming with us. All right. And we're going to backtrack a little bit because I want you to see what the promise was between God and and Abram. But let's go ahead and finish it off. We're gonna go to 17, same place, Genesis 12:17. We're gonna finish this off. Sorry about that.
But the Lord inflicted serious disease on Pharaoh and his household because of Abram's wife Sarai. So Pharaoh summoned Abram. What have you done to me? He said, why didn't you tell me she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister so that I took her to be my wife? Now then, here is your wife. Take her and go. Then Pharaoh gave orders about Abram to his men, and they sent him on his way with his wife and everything he had.
So God comes up to Pharaoh, and he's like, you stay away from this woman. You stay away from this woman. And this is after Pharaoh had given Abraham a dowry, like, oh, let me marry your sister and I'll give you all of this property, all of this livestock, all of these servants, right? And he takes it. And God is like, whoa. This is going to be the mother of the Jewish people. You cannot take this woman, right? And Pharaoh is like, dude, why did you not tell me that you were married to this woman? You almost made me commit a sin against your God. And Pharaoh is just like, get away from me, man, because you almost made me die because of your cowardice. All right. And then what happens? Is there a big consequence for Abraham?
No.
There is no big consequence for Abraham. So what me and Diana were talking about was a lot of people, sometimes when they get to like really talking about God, is they're like, well, why does what was your question?
Well, why do good things happen to bad people?
Why do good things happen to bad people? Abraham was not being a stand-up guy. He absolutely was not being a stand-up guy. And what happens is he tells him to go now. And he gave orders for Abraham and his men to be sent away with all of the things. He kept all of the things. He kept all of the things. So then we think, what's going on here? Should God have punished Abraham? I don't know. But he doesn't. Why do you think he doesn't?
Because God is merciful. He sees a bigger picture, and
yeah,
he was not that he's necessarily a bad person. He just, wasn't making the right choice at the moment, but God knows.
Agreed. And did he really get off scot-free?
No.
How so?
Yeah. Well, as a wife, I would imagine he would be sleeping in the doghouse.
Absolutely, right? He's gonna have consequences. Absolutely. God decided, I'm gonna have mercy with you, Abraham. I'm gonna have mercy with you because I understand why you were fearful. Okay. But just so you know, these actions will have consequences. Okay. So then we're gonna go ahead and go back to the promise between God and Abraham. Why? Because we need to know where this root of his true mentality should really be at. So let's go ahead and we'll read 1 through 3. Genesis 12, 1 through 3.
The Lord had said to Abram, go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation and will bless you. I will make your name great and will be a blessing, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all the people on earth will be blessed through you.
All of the people in the earth will be blessed through you. That's what he says. That's what promise. He says. That's a huge promise. That is a huge promise that God has with Abraham. Okay, so if God were to part the clouds and speak to you, and you would know that that's the voice of God, what would your mentality be like? All right, you would think that there's nothing that could ever go against you because I just heard the power of the Creator. I just had a conversation with God.
Mhm.
All right. So nothing can get in my way. Famine, whatever. Let's go to Egypt. We'll get whatever we need and we'll go. But what happens is at the first sign of an obstacle,
Mhm.
we see what Abraham
He
does.
regressed in
All
his
right.
mentality.
He regressed in his mentality, but luckily he serves a merciful, loving God. Not harmless God, but a merciful and loving God. All right, because he had a purpose for Abraham.
Mhm.
And I think that's where we need to really think of is he gets forgiven, but it's because it fits the purpose of what God has for him.
Mhm.
All right, so we're going to go ahead
He
and
was actively trying to fulfill his purpose. Yeah.
absolutely. So we're going to go ahead and continue on. All right. Let's go ahead and see what Abraham is doing in Genesis 22 to 7. Can you read through 7? Can you read that for
2
me?
to 7. And there Abraham said to his wife Sarah, "She is my sister." Then Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent for Sarah and took her. But God came to Abimelech in a dream one night and said to him, "You are as good as dead because of the woman you have taken. She is a married woman." Now Abimelech had not gone near her, so he said, "Lord, will you destroy an innocent nation? Did he not say to me, 'She is my sister'? And didn't she also say, 'He is my brother'? I have done this with a clear conscience and clear hands." Then God said to him in the dream, "Yes, I know you did this with a clear conscience, and so I have kept you from sinning against me. This is why I did not let you touch her. Now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, you may be sure that you and all who belong to you will die."
Will die. What? So what happened here?
He
The
did it again.
same thing. The same thing. He has a few chapters where he's doing the right thing. He tries to save Sodom and Gomorrah from being destroyed. He like welcomes visitors. He does all of this wonderful stuff. He commits himself to God through circumcision. He does all of this wonderful stuff. But then he commits the same sin. Now, we could be all high and mighty, right? We could be like, how dare he do the same thing? Even after we have countless different examples of how God was so merciful, so good, and so loving. But how often do we commit the same sin?
Oh, yeah. Guilty.
Again and again. So, do we have a leg to stand on here? Absolutely not. So, this is what we need to look at is God gave us this man that's flawed to go ahead and be an example to us, to show us that his mercy is huge, but that his mentality was lacking at this point. That he had points where his mentality was good, was aligned with God, was aligned with being a father of a great nation. And those were the thoughts that were bouncing around in his head. But when fear came along, like can you read Romans 8:5 again? When fear came along, when that carnal fear was something that like overwhelmed him. Go ahead.
Those who live according to the flesh have their mind set on what the flesh desires, but those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their mind set on what the Spirit desires.
Absolutely. So was he living according to the flesh, or was he living according to the Spirit?
Mm-hmm.
Was it living according to the flesh? So, wow, we're seeing this man of flaws, right? And he's not perfect, but we're not perfect either. Yet God still has a purpose for him. He doesn't throw him away, just like he doesn't throw us away. Okay? So this is a story of hope. This is a story of mentality. This is a story of how we are so quick to forget what God we serve.
Mm-hmm.
And that those moments of weaknesses where what's bouncing around in your head is not what God says or what God's opinion is of you, but what his carnal needs and desires feel like are appropriate at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to go into one more example. Does Abraham finally redeem himself? Okay. And he has redeemed himself a few times, but let's look at a really big example. All right. We're going to go into Genesis 22, 1-2. We're going to listen to what God is asking Abraham to do.
Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you."
What? So we talked about how Abraham, a really important thing for him was to have children, right? Because he was already much older. I think he was, I should have wrote it down, but more than 75 years old. I think he's finally like 100 years old when he has Isaac as a child, right? 100 years old. So this kid is a miracle child because Sarah was just a little younger than him, right? She was barren her entire life until God finally fulfilled his covenant, right? So now after all of this time, now you want me to sacrifice this child to you? So what's the mindset that he could have had? Let's look at the flesh mindset. Let's look at the fearful mindset, the self-preservation mindset. All right? That mentality. That mentality, what it would say is, there's absolutely no way. You made me wait like 100 years for you to finally give me this child. How am I going to be a father of a great nation if the first kid that you're giving me at 100 years old is going to die, right? He could have said that, right? But we're going to go ahead and continue on reading, right?
Okay.
We're going to read 5, yes.
He said to his servants,
this is after they already, they pack everything up and they're about to go to the mountain where he's telling him to go ahead and sacrifice Isaac. Go, sorry.
He said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship and then we will come back to you."
Okay. So let's think about this, right? So they're on their way up to the mountain and they're servants with him, right? And there's one of two thought processes here. Now, you could be thinking he's got a flesh mindset here, and he's saying, "Oh, let's leave these people here because the moment that they realize that I'm sacrificing the boy, these servants are going to turn on me and they're going to kill me," right? And that's initially what I thought. I was like, "Oh yeah, he's trying to make sure that they don't kill him. Maybe he'll come back and lie to them and say, oh, the kid got attacked by a wolf or something. I don't know. Something like that, right?" But then let's actually read what the words are saying, all right? And how does he respond? He says,
"Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship and then we will come back to you."
He says, "We will worship and then we will come back to you," right? So he's been following this God for a long time, right? He's been following this God. This God was true to his covenant, right? He gave him a child. He gave him a child at a very advanced age. He turned a barren womb into a womb that could give birth,
Mhm.
right? So he's like, we'll be back. We'll absolutely be back. So does that sound like a mentality of self-preservation, a carnal mentality, or does that sound like a mentality where he knows that God will provide, a godly mentality, a mentality of the father of a great nation?
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's totally trusting in God.
Because he knows that somehow he's going to come through, because he's come through for him so often, and he's seen the manifestation of his mercy again and again. And he's like, this God has been a God of mercy and love. You know what? If he needs me to do this, it's going to be for a good reason. And then let's go ahead and read what happens from 7 to 8. Actually, let's read from 6 to 8.
Okay. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the two of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father." "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and the wood are here," Isaac said, "but where is a lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the two of them went on together.
All right. So Isaac is following his dad, right? And Abraham's like loading Isaac with some stuff. Here, help me out. Get some stuff together. And Isaac gets a little curious. He gets a little curious. And he's like, so we're building this altar to sacrifice a lamb.
Where's the lamb?
Dude, where's the lamb?
Mhm.
And
He
he's
did.
like,
He was.
God will provide, right? That's what he said. God will provide. And then what happens? He takes the boy, he puts the boy on the altar, and he's about to sacrifice the boy. And in Genesis 22:12, it says, "Do not lay a hand on the boy," he said. "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." And then they end up finding a ram in the bushes. God points them out to the actual sacrifice. But this was a test. This was a test for Abraham, to test his mentality, to test his obedience, to test the thoughts that are going on in his mind, the reaction that he was going to take, and then the actions that he takes after that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we see. We see a maturity in Abraham. We see that he has his eyes opened, that he's filling his mind with all of the wonderful memories of how God has been loyal to him and merciful and faithful and true to his promise again and again, even after all of the bad things that Abraham does. So what I want you guys to take away is that what we put into our minds, the mentality, the thoughts that we rattle around in and bounce around in our heads are what manifests out. They're the things that you focus on, and they're the things that will go ahead and guide you towards your purpose. So we need to make sure that our mentality is not a mentality connected to our flesh, but it's connected to this God that has been so faithful. If you're ever anxious or fearful, think of all of the things that are working in your life. Think of the fact that you have functional lungs. Think of the fact that you woke up this morning, that you have a wonderful family, that you were able to eat something that day. These are all different manifestations of a merciful, loving God. And that, if you throw those thoughts around in your mind, you're going to feel comforted.
Mhm.
You're going to know that there's nothing that could go against you because he also calls you his son and daughter. He says that you're a masterpiece. He says that you are just one of the most treasured things. He actually created you in his image. Would you ever create something in your image that you hated? No, absolutely not. You wouldn't make a model of yourself in poop,
Mhm.
right? That's not something you would want to do. Weird example, but it paints a picture, right? So that's what we wanted to talk to you guys about. Do you have a question of the day?
Sure. When Abraham went to sacrifice Isaac, what did they find in the bush?
In the bushes. All right. So go ahead and put your answer in the comments. We love you guys so much. We will see you next week. And make sure you always have just thoughts of all of the blessings that God gives you in your mind, because that is what's going to lead you to just having a better life.
Mhm.
And yeah, have a good one, guys. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.